Hello, recruit, and welcome to an Astroneer Academy Extra, presenting the second half of our discussion of Xenobiology, focusing on the mission chain for recovering all 7 galastropods. Today, we will meet the remaining 6 galastropods and explore some additional concepts surrounding galastropods. Today's course will not be as involved as last week's, simply because several of the missions we will encounter today have a great deal of overlap with those we completed to recover Galastropoda silva, also known as Sylvie. Instead, we will highlight the differences in the recovery process of the remaining 6 snails. Before we can begin recovering additional space snails, we have a mission from last week that we must complete. The tracking power mission requires that you provide power to the Xenobiology lab to once again recharge its internal power storage and then activate the tracker through the data log on the Xenobiology lab to locate other galastropods. If you heeded my advice from last week's course, then your Xenobiology lab was already connected to your main base power network via its cable plug, and your Xenobiology lab is already recharged. If you did not heed this advice, then you can review that portion of last week's course to determine your preferred method for recharging the lab's internal power. Once your lab is recharged, simply interact with the data log to open it and press the big green button to activate the tracker. Doing so will complete the tracking power mission, which will reward you with an oxygen filter and introduce 2 new missions, G. desolo shells and G. calidor shells. Activating the tracker on the Xenobiology lab will also decrypt 2 additional entries under the specimens category. Specifically, Galastropoda desolo Usagi and Galastropoda calidor Stilgar. From these entries, we learn that Usagi is an expert at finding shiny things. In terms of your adventure as an Astroneer, shiny things can refer to numerous collectible items that we will discuss further in Astroneer Academy 305, but she can also help you locate other items such as Rex solar arrays and even the Rex spaceports we discussed in an Astroneer Academy 201 Extra. When she is fed and located on the same planet as you, your compass will be updated with nav points resembling Usagi, indicating points of interest you may wish to investigate. As an added bonus, if any friends should join you on your adventure in your instance of the training simulation, their compass will be updated with points of interest from Usagi as long as they are on the same planet as a well-fed Usagi. Her favorite seed is the same as Sylvie's, the mutant hispine seed. Usagi is also able to help you find data circuits, installed platforms, and parkade pads. These items still have the familiar Usagi-shaped nav points on your compass, though they are a different color. The installed platforms and parkade pads will appear as a bright green icon, while the data circuits will be a bright aqua color. We also learn that Stilgar, the galastropod we recover from calidor, can provide oxygen. When fed and attached to your backpack, Stilgar will keep your oxygen tank full. Not only that, but if a fellow Astroneer joins you in your instance of the training simulation, Stilgar will provide oxygen to them as well in much the same fashion as a portable oxygenator would if you were carrying one of those in your backpack. If Stilgar's terrarium is freestanding, you can connect to his oxygen supply via tethers and even create a tether network from his terrarium. If you place his terrarium on a platform, the oxygen will flow to other platforms that are connected via power cables, which can allow you to supply oxygen to your entire base. If you plan on venturing far from tethers or a vehicle, be certain to keep a seed queued on top of Stilgar's terrarium to ensure you do not suddenly find yourself suffocating because Stilgar becomes hungry again. Stilgar also presents a couple of weird quirks when he is providing oxygen. You will no longer connect to an existing tether network when Stilgar is active in your backpack, which also means your backpack cannot recharge via tethers as it normally would. You can work around this by opening your backpack briefly, which will often result in a connection to the nearby tethers, recharging your backpack in the process. I have no idea why this works the way it does, or why there are times it doesn't work, so I just chalk it up to the fact that we exist inside of a simulation and occasionally there are glitches. Stilgar's favorite seed comes from the mutant Attactus. Now that we know a little bit about these two space snails, let's go recover them. You will, once again, need to scan 5 of each space snail's respective discarded shells. On Desolo, you will find G desolo shells in the crater region, and on Calidor, you will find G calidor shells on small stalagmites in the cave regions, often accompanied by research samples. Once you have scanned 5 of each space snail's respective shells, you will have completed the corresponding missions and can collect the empty terrariums for each galastropod. Both terrariums will require soil. Additionally, Usagi's terrarium for Desolo will require tungsten and a dagger root seed, while Stilgar's terrarium will require copper and a wheezeweed seed. Completing the respective terrarium missions will reward you with 250 bytes for each mission. You are now ready to recover these two snails, and the process is practically identical to that you used to recover Sylvie. Attach a small horn to the top of the terrarium, approach the space snail and perform a dance emote, and repeat the process until you are able to befriend them via the empty terrarium. Your reward for completing the recovery missions is, as always, the snail you just recovered. With both snails safely in their terrarium, head back to the Xenobiology lab and complete the verification process. As a refresher, to complete verification, all you need to do is place the now occupied terrarium in the small Tier 1 slot next to the data log on the Xenobiology lab and wait for the verification process to complete. Perform a verification for both space snails you have just recovered, being certain to collect your rewards of 250 bytes for each verification mission. Whew, we just crammed a lot of activity into a very short segment there, so let's slow down for a moment to discuss the new missions that opened up once you completed the 2 verification missions. The first is fairly straightforward and does not require a great deal of discussion. The Signal Boost mission indicates that the Xenobiology lab needs to boost its tracking capability in order to locate additional galastropods and requires an exochip to do so. You can refer back to Astroneer Academy 202 for information on obtaining an exochip. Once you have one, simply place it into the small Tier 1 slot of the Xenobiology lab where it will be consumed. Now, open the data log control panel and reactivate the tracker to complete the Signal Boost mission and open up 2 additional missions that we will discuss in just a moment. You can also claim your reward of 500 bytes for completing Signal Boost. The other mission, Wholesome Produce, introduces you to the concept of planting seeds to harvest later as food for your growing group of adorable little alien invaders. You can plant any seed you wish, and as soon as you do, you will have completed the Wholesome Produce mission, which will reward you with a medium storage silo and 2 proximity repeaters. These may seem like odd rewards, but they are actually trying to nudge you towards automating a farm for galastropod food. We will explore automation more in depth next quarter, but I want to take a minute to demonstrate how you can utilize these proximity repeaters in a galastropod seed farm. If you place a seed on the ground within the area of effect indicated by the proximity repeater and then activate the repeater, the seed will be planted. That is because a proximity repeater will activate anything and everything within its area of effect. When the seed has fully grown, you can use the proximity repeater again to harvest the plant. This allows you to plant and harvest a large number of seeds at once. You can take it even further, however, by introducing the second proximity repeater. This second proximity repeater will be activated by the first, which in turn activates the first repeater again, creating an activation loop. The repeaters are not only activating each other, but they will also interact with anything in their area of effect. Since many fully grown plants drop 2 seeds when harvested, this dual proximity repeater setup can quickly turn a single seed into a large crop of plants. Seeds can only be planted when they are on the ground, however, and that is where the medium storage silo enters the picture. You can stop the activation loop of the repeaters by simply moving one outside of the area of effect of the other. Now when the plants are fully grown, you can harvest them, collecting their seeds and storing them on the medium storage silo. Since these seeds are now slotted onto storage, they cannot be activated by a nearby proximity repeater, so you can safely restart the activation loop if you wish. Since many of the space snails have incredibly powerful benefits, it is a good idea to have a small crop of their favorite seeds on standby to ensure you can keep the space snails fed. Please note that when most plants are harvested, only one of the two seeds can be automatically replanted. That is because only one seed will typically be on the ground, while the other may be hovering just above the ground. That second seed cannot be planted since it is not touching the ground, so you need to pick it up and place it back down. If a seed is not attached to storage or planted in the ground, it will dematerialize after a short time. There are automation solutions that can retrieve the unplanted seeds and place them on storage, but we will pick up that idea again when we discuss automation. It should also be noted that once a seed has been planted, it will pause germinating a new plant if you leave its general area. This is by design. If seeds were being endlessly activated by a proximity repeater at all times, your garden of mutant plants could grow far larger than you intended. This would result in scores of plants being harvested and replanted at the exact same moment, which would degrade the performance of your instance of the training simulation. To protect against that performance degradation, the seeds are only able to grow when you are in the same general area. When you completed the Signal Boost mission several minutes ago, you also activated the Shells mission for 2 more galastropods, this time on Vesania Novus. The shells on Vesania can be found in the mountain regions and scanned as you have for previous galastropods. The shells on Novus will appear in the cave regions, but if you open your compass, you will most likely notice that the shell nav points are grayed out, indicating that there is an additional step required before you can scan the shell. If you follow one of these nav points, you will encounter one of these large rocks. Interact with the rock and it will break apart, revealing at least one space snail shell and, more often than not, a resource nugget or 2. Once you have scanned 5 of each respective shell, head back to a landing pad to claim the empty terrariums for each planet. The Vesania terrarium will require soil, lithium, and a lash leaf seed, while the Novus terrarium will require soil, iron, and a thistle whip seed. Providing the proper resources to both terrariums will once again reward you with 250 bytes for completing each of the respective missions, and will add the respective recovery missions to your mission log. The recovery process is identical to those we have already encountered. You place the horn on the terrarium so it can begin playing a tune that will lure the space snail out of hiding. When you approach the snail, you perform a dance emote, and the snail will burrow off to a new location. Repeat the dance emote until the indicator on the nav point above the space snail is completely filled, enabling you to befriend them. Once you have befriended each one, head back to your Xenobiology lab to complete the verification process for each snail. Be certain to claim all of the byte rewards for the missions you have completed while recovering these 2 space snails. Let's backtrack a moment to investigate the lab's data log to learn about these 2 new galastropod friends. Galastropoda Vesania, also known as Princess, is one tough snail. When fed and placed within your backpack, Princess shields you from all damage. Fall damage, explosions, hazardous flora. Princess shrugs off all of them, keeping you protected. When you do encounter a situation that would typically inflict damage, you will see a blue vignette effect appear where you would typically see a red effect, indicating that Princess has protected you. When used in conjunction with Stilgar, you temporarily become, for all intents and purposes, invincible. Princess's favorite seed comes from both variants of Mutant Cataplant, so be sure to keep plenty of those on hand to take advantage of her extraordinary abilities. Galastropoda Novus, also known as Rogal, is quite literally powerful, providing power at a rate of 6 units per second when fed. You can utilize this power for terrain tool augments and other items in your backpack, or you can place Rogal's terrarium into a small tier 1 or larger slot to utilize that power as part of your base power network. Note that Rogal's terrarium does not include any power cables when freestanding, so you must store them on a platform that does have power cables. Rogal's preferred food is the seed from either variant of the mutant cataplant. Before we can begin recovery of the final 2 galastropods, we must first return to the Xenobiology lab and complete the Overcharged mission. This mission will further boost the lab's tracking capabilities and is completed by supplying 2 exochips, one at a time, and once again charging the lab's internal power storage. Once both of these requirements are fulfilled, you can reactivate the lab's tracker and collect your reward of 500 bytes. You can also begin the process of recovering the final 2 galastropods. As usual, the recovery process begins with first collecting data by scanning discarded shells on Glacio and Atrox. For Glacio, you may wish to bring along some dynamite, as the shells are encased in large, otherwise impenetrable ice chunks. And here's a pro tip for opening several of these ice chunks at once. You can easily dig up the ice chunks and then carry them to place them near one another. Group all 5 as close together as you can, then attach a single dynamite to one of them. Activate the dynamite, step back a safe distance, and watch as all 5 ice chunks are blown apart. As long as all 5 are in the blast radius of the dynamite, they will be cracked open, revealing the shells inside. Once the shells are extracted, you can scan them as usual. The process of scanning shells on Atrox is not exactly straightforward either. You may wish to utilize your compass and follow the corresponding nav points, but do so with caution. The shells on Atrox are located under the elegant spew flower hazards on the surface of the planet. You will need to safely dig up spew flowers before you can obtain the seeds, and fortunately, not every spew flower will reveal a seed. Stick with it though, and you will eventually uncover all 5 shells that you need to scan. From this point, the process of recovering the final 2 galastropods is effectively the same as it has been. Collect the terrariums after scanning shells and fill the terrariums with the required contents. For Glacio, you need to supply soil, argon, and a pop coral seed, and for Atrox, you must supply soil, helium, and a spine lily seed. For both of these space snails, it is best to use a full canister of their respective gas. While some astroneers have reported success utilizing only partially filled gas canisters, others have not. With the terrariums prepared, you can visit Glacio and Atrox to recover their space snails through the same recovery process of placing your horn on the terrarium and then dancing for the snail until you're able to befriend them. And of course, you will need to return to the Xenobiology lab on Silva for verification of both of your new space snail friends. On Glacio, you will befriend Bestefar, a grumpy-looking little guy that provides a nice boost to your terrain tool when he is fed and attached to one of the 3 terrain tool attachment slots. Unlike drill mods and terrain tool augments, Bestefar will not consume any power while providing this boost to your terrain tool. Better still, Bestefar's effects stack with a wide mod and a boost mod, which will allow your terrain tool to drill even faster and wider. Bestefar's effects do not stack with drill mods though, so you will still need more powerful drill mods to get through the hardest terrain. On his own, Bestefar's effects are the equivalent of a drill mod 1, boost mod, and wide mod. Oh, and Bestefar's favorite seed comes from the mutant Boomaloon. On Atrox, your new space snail friend is Enoki. When fed and carried in your backpack, Enoki increases your jump height, sprint speed, and reduces the movement speed reduction that you would typically encounter when carrying large items. Enoki's preferred seed comes from either variant of the mutant spew flower. Enoki may not be intelligent, but that lone brain cell is enough to allow you to stack their effects. Once again, you can have a friend join your instance of the simulation and reclaim their own copy of Enoki. Get enough copies of Enoki and, well, this happens. I'd suggest leaving some space for Princess and Stilgar in your backpack if you plan on carrying around several Enoki at once. With all 7 galastropods recovered and verified, and all of the Xenobiology missions complete, that brings us to the end of today's course, right? Wrong. We have 2 more missions to complete, plus we need to talk about what happened to Dr. Yoh and the ESS Triton. To begin the next mission, all together now, you must use the data log to activate the sonic array hatch on the Xenobiology lab and slot all 7 galastropods to the sonic array in order to send a transmission of your galastropod findings. The sonic array hatch is located at the top of the Xenobiology lab, just above the smaller hatch where you placed the oxygenator. Once you have slotted the 7th galastropod into the sonic array hatch, the snails will begin sending their transmission in the form of a song. Your focus will be drawn into observing this transmission until it is complete, at which point you will resume full control over the training simulation. If, at any time, you remove the space snails from the sonic array and then replace all 7 later, the space snails will once again send their transmission. With the transmission complete, head over to your landing pad to claim your mission rewards of 2 QTRTGs and a cosmetic reward of the lab suit. We still haven't taken the time to discuss cosmetic choices within the training simulation, but it is coming in an Astroneer Academy 301 Extra. With the All Together Now mission complete, you have one final Xenobiology mission remaining. Final entry. Return to the Xenobiology lab and activate the tracker one last time. This will decrypt the final entry in Dr. Yoh's personal files and reward you with an RTG for completing the mission. Before we wrap up today, I want to briefly summarize what we can learn from Dr. Yoh's personal files. In the initial entry, Dr. Yoh is aboard the ESS Triton with crewman Nao and an undisclosed additional number of crew en route to Lubos Prime to study 7 newly hatched galastropods adaptation in a new environment. Dr. Yoh finds the value of this research questionable, as extensive research has already been conducted on Galastropoda aptum. It would also seem that none of the space snails have yet succeeded in hijacking a neurological response in Dr. Yoh, as they are annoyed by crewman Nao's emotional response to the space snails, including giving names to each one. Dr. Yoh does seem to have succumbed to the influence of the young space snails in the second entry in their personal files. They're referring to the space snails by name, and even admitting that both they and the space snails seem much happier as a result of their time spent together. Dr. Yoh apparently had some sort of bet with Nao that must be settled. If I had to guess, that wager involved Dr. Yoh's efforts to remain emotionally detached from their scientific research, but that wager will have to wait. Nao and his team are very busy charting a course to an anomaly that has been picked up on the Triton scanners. By the third entry, Dr. Yoh has come around to the idea of having galastropods integrated into society. They remark that the temporary improvements provided by the space snails are an objectively beneficial increase, though it is possible their objectivity is questionable since we know the galastropods can hijack a neurological response in our brains. Regardless, Dr. Yoh appears to be happy for their course diversion, as it will provide them more time to document any permanent effects the space snails may be having. Of course, Dr. Yoh is also excited about the research with galastropods on Lubos Prime and is anxious to learn how it will change her little space snail friends. The entry concludes with Dr. Yoh remarking that they can hear Nao calling and that it seems urgent. The final entry takes a very dark turn. The Triton has come under attack. Dr. Yoh has sealed himself in the nursery portion of the Triton Xenobiology lab along with the galastropods. Dr. Yoh is, apparently, the only remaining crew member aboard the Triton. They heard Nao calling to them earlier, though they suspect it was actually something pretending to be Nao. Dr. Yoh has accepted that there is no way to save the Triton, and there is no way to get themselves off the ship. They have set the command to jettison the nursery from the Triton in an attempt to save the space snails. All that is left is to push the button. What may have been Dr. Yoh's final act did indeed save the galastropod. And, thanks to your efforts, all 7 have been recovered and are once again together, happy, and fed. Good work, recruit. Be proud of what you have accomplished. As for the Triton, we will see references to it again as we delve into the history surrounding additional topics in later courses. But for today, you have recovered the remaining 6 galastropods, identified the positive effects of each one, and learned how to create a farm for their food. Next week, we will begin our investigation into another mystery of the Silva Planetary System, Gateway Chambers. Until then, I'm Brandon, reminding you to keep looking to the stars.